Welcome back to the channel. Today we've got more college basketball best bets for Friday, January 31st. Yesterday was just alright, but again, we'll have a better day today. Not a huge slate of college basketball, but there's enough, obviously. There's a game in the Big Ten, a big one, obviously, in the state of Indiana. In 49 states, it's basketball. In one state, it's just something else. I think I butchered that saying. But regardless, in West Lafayette, of course, you got Indiana taking on Purdue and some other kind of big games today. We've got some action that I think is a very important one tomorrow or today between Akron and Kent State. So we'll get to all those games and more. But folks, before we get into the 5 best bets, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more daily college basketball best bets here on the channel. Make sure again to leave a like. We will do 10 best bets on the channel tomorrow for college basketball. If we get 100 likes on this video, we will give you 10 best bets tomorrow instead of 5. So make sure to leave a like and hit that subscribe button down below. It's all I ask for y'all to do by watching these videos. Also, make sure to go check out our NBA predictions. We went perfect with the NBA yesterday. So make sure to check that video out in a couple hours when it's posted here on the channel. And also, tomorrow morning is UFC Fight Night, Adesanya versus Imavov. Make sure to check out that video, that prediction video, in the link down below. Again, the fights are tomorrow on Saturday morning. Okay. On to the first of our 5 best bets for today, and we're going to start things off here in the Ivy League. Most of the Ivy League teams, if not all of them, are playing today, so we kind of have to look at some Ivy League ball because, again, there are very, minimal big-time basketball games today, I'd say, other than Indiana and Purdue, obviously with a bunch of teams playing tomorrow on Saturday, and that's, again, why if we get 100 likes on this video, we will do 10 best bets tomorrow because there's a huge slate tomorrow for Saturday, February 1st. But we're going to start things off here with the Princeton Tigers and the Yale Bulldogs. We don't really go over Ivy League basketball all that much, but this is a spot that I don't mind, and I like the value here. I like the Princeton Tigers at home. They are plus money home dogs. Plus 130, plus 2.5. I don't mind Princeton here. They are 3-1 in the Ivy League so far this season, with their only loss being in their last game against Cornell. That game was at home for Princeton, but Cornell, again, not a horrible team. They went in there and beat them by 9 points. Prior to that, though, for Princeton in Ivy League play, a win at Harvard, a win at Dartmouth, and a win at home against Columbia. They are taking on the undefeated in conference play Ivy League undefeated team in Yale. I don't know why I was trying to say Yale's name was Ivy, but for the Yale Bulldogs, a 4-0 team in conference play, a win over Brown, win at Columbia, win against Dartmouth at home, and a win at home against Harvard. But again, they've only had one road game this year in Ivy League play, and it is that win over Columbia, but it was a 4-point victory, and Columbia's 0-4 in conference play. It's hard to go on the road and win in the Ivy League. It just is. A lot of these teams play each other fairly competitively. I would say it's hard for one Ivy League team to set itself, ahead of the pack in Ivy League competition, just because a lot of these teams are really evenly well matched. Obviously, if I'm not mistaken, I'm 100% confident. I'm sure it is this way in football. I think it's the same way in basketball. There are no athletic scholarships in the Ivy League. I know for a fact that's in football. I believe it's the same case in basketball. So it's really hard for these teams to set themselves apart from each other. So you do get a lot of really competitive games, and as a result of that, again, it is hard for teams like Yale, who is 4-0 in conference play, to go on the road and beat a very good team in Princeton. You look at what Yale has done prior to Ivy League play this year. They've lost a lot of road games. They go to El Paso and lose to UTEP. They go to Rhode Island and lose that game as well. They go to Minnesota and lose, even though, again, it is what it is. It's a Big Ten team, but that's when Minnesota, I think, was at its worst this season. They went to UIC and lost. They went to West Lafayette, obviously, and lost to Purdue as well, a game where actually the Bulldogs only lost by 8 points. And I'm not going to say that Yale's a bad team. I think Yale is actually very good. They are led by John Pouladikis, I believe I say his name. I say his first name. Or last name. He is averaging 19.5 so far this year. The senior out of Naperville, Illinois. Nick Townsend's averaging 14.5. Bez Mabang averaging 12 as well. But I think it's just going to be really tough for Yale to go on the road and beat this Princeton team. A team that prior to the Cornell loss was on a huge winning streak. Their biggest win of the year obviously was the win over Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey against Rutgers. It was a 1-point victory for the Princeton Tigers. They went on to beat Akron after that, which is a team that we're going to get to in a few moments here. A win at Harvard, obviously, and again, we went over the Ivy League play, but Harvard win, Dartmouth win, and a Columbia win as well. Princeton is led by Xavier Lee. He is the guy around here. He's the guy around town at Princeton, obviously, averaging 17 points a game. The junior out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. put up 17 last year for Princeton, replicating those numbers again this year, and I would say probably having a better season this year as well for Princeton. So you're going to get a lot out of Xavier Lee. You're going to get Caden Pierce, who's averaging 12. You're going to get Dalen Davis, who's averaging 10, and Blake Peters, who's averaging 10 as well. I think these teams do match up fairly well on paper. Again, Yale is a really good team non-conference-wise. Again, they struggled a little bit on the road, losing to URI, losing to UTEP, losing to Minnesota and UIC, but still, they've really looked good in Ivy League play. But the last time they went on the road, though, again, a competitive game against Columbia, if they give up that many points against Princeton, they're going to lose this game against the Tigers. I think, again, Princeton's able to effectively score on this team, and I think it's going to be really difficult for Yale to go on the road and win this game. And I understand, again, Princeton is coming off a home loss. That does suck. But I do think they're able to bounce back in a big way here. This team has been pretty solid all year long at home. They did have a loss, I believe, to Loyola Chicago earlier in the year, but that was all the way back in November. Again, against the Yale team that hasn't played particularly well at all on the road this season. I do think Princeton's able to get it off the backs of Xavier Lee and Caden Pierce, who has really taken a step up in scoring in the last couple nights for the Princeton Tigers. I like Princeton here. It's an early start time. It's a 2 p.m. on the West Coast game, 5 p.m. Eastern time game. We like the Princeton Tigers. You can either take the spread or you can take the money line plus 2.5. Don't mind it. Don't mind the plus 130 as well. We're going to take the Princeton Tigers to win at home and cover, obviously, against the Yale Bulldogs to kick off the day. Next up, we move to some action, a big game in the Mid-American Conference between the two teams to start the season that we thought were the best teams in the MAC. That is the Akron Zips taking on the Kent State Golden Flashes. Now, again, that Akron pick has been more than accurate. Obviously, Akron has been the best team in the MAC, and I would say right now they are undoubtedly the best team in the Mid-American Conference, obviously, with their win a couple games ago against Miami of Ohio, the other team who was perfect up until that point in MAC play. Akron ended up beating them by 27 points. The Zips are undefeated in Big Ten. In MAC play this season, their last loss comes at the hands of Princeton. They did lose to both Princeton and Yale, but hey, since MAC play has started, Akron has swept the board, beating Central Michigan, going to East Michigan, beating Toledo, beating Ohio, going to Buffalo and winning, beating Miami of Ohio, and going to NIU and winning as well. I'm surprised the odds are where they're at for this game. I understand it. Kent State's at home. The Golden Flashes have been playing all right, but they did host Miami of Ohio a couple games ago, and they lost that game. The Red Hawks went into Kent, Ohio, and they won that basketball game. Now, I'm pretty sure, again, Akron is fairly close to Kent State. I believe it's within a couple hours in the state of Ohio, so it's not that big of a road trip for the Akron Zips, and I honestly think the Zips are just the better basketball team. Again, this is an 8-0 team so far this year in conference play. They have not matched up against the Golden Flashes yet this season. This is their first matchup. But Kent State, a 4-4 team in the MAC so far this year. Losses to Ball State, West Michigan, Miami of Ohio, and Ohio as well. But the thing is, 3 of those 4 losses come at home. So it's not like not like the Golden Flashes play excellent basketball at home or better basketball at home than they do on the road. They actually have a better road record this year and a big win on the road against Toledo. I mean, again, Kent State has been much better on the road than they've been at home this season. So I don't think it's too much of an advantage that the Golden Flashes get by hosting the Akron Zips in this game. And again, they're hosting the best team in the conference. Kent State, led by Von Cameron Davis, a guy who's going to give you 16 points a night. Jalen Sullinger as well is going to be able to score. But other than those two guys, there's no real consistent scores on this Golden Flashes team. For the Akron Zips, they're led by Nate Johnson, Tavari Johnson, and Isaiah Gray. Again, an all-around cohesive unit here for the Akron Zips, and a team that just finds ways to win. It's that simple. A big victory again on the 25th over Miami of Ohio, a 27-point victory at home against the second best team in your conference, or the other team, I guess, that is the elite squad in your conference. I feel fine with Akron against anybody. And we look at who the Zips have gone on the road and beat this season. I mean, a win at Eastern Michigan, but they blew them out the water, beating the Eagles 105-81, going to Bowling Green, sneaking out a close victory. But again, a win is a win. Going to Buffalo, and I get it, the Bulls aren't very good, but winning that game 90-58. And then a win at NIU, winning that game 80-70. They have not had problems going on the road this year and winning, at least in MAC play. If you want to look non-conference schedule, they did lose to Arkansas State on the road. They lost to St. Mary's and Moraga, and they also lost to Princeton. But in terms of their conference record, again, the Zips are undefeated, 8-0. They have not had much trouble, and I wouldn't expect Kent State to be that first team to hand them a loss. And I get it. Again, On paper, going into the season, I said it multiple times, the Golden Flashes I was really excited for. Hell, if you look back at the first ever college basketball best bets video we made back on November 4th, we picked Kent State, and that was one of the first, I think actually we did 10 best bets in that video, but still, Kent State was one of the first games we went over, and I spoke very highly of the Golden Flashes, and we picked them to go on the road to the Cajun Dome and beat the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, and that's exactly what happened in that game. But Kent State, again, they weren't bad going into MAC play, right? I mean, they had a loss to UC Irvine as expected. They lost to Auburn. They lost to Bama. They were 9-3 going into MAC play, with their only losses, again, being 3 teams that are going to be in the NCAA tournament, obviously, with Auburn and Bama, who are top teams in the country. Auburn being the top team in the country, and then UCI, a team I speak very highly of. Now, again, they barely snuck out a win last night at the beach, but hey, a win is a win for UC Irvine. We didn't think they were going to cover. Well, I mean, I didn't pick them to cover, so we didn't even go over the game yesterday. So hey, UCI is still winning. I think they can still be like a 10, potentially 9-8 seed in the NCAA tournament as long as they win out. I don't think the Riverside loss is going to hurt them too much. But again, Kent's just been very disappointing in MAC play. They've lost 3 out their last 5, losses to West Michigan, Miami of Ohio, at Ohio, then wins again against Toledo and Bowling Green, and by far their best victory this season is the win on the road at Toledo. Other than that, I'm not blown away by Kent State. We have picked them a couple times this year, that's fair, but when you compare them against a very good team in Akron, yeah, I'm going to take the Zips. Again, so I want to make sure I'm clear on this. I will take Kent State against the lower teams in the MAC, obviously, and against other like middle-of-the-pack squads, and potentially, again, some good teams as well, but I just think Akron's on a different level personally. I think Miami of Ohio is pretty clearly the second best team in the conference, but by far the best team in the Mid-American this season is the Akron Zips. So give me the Zips on the road. I don't think, again, the game being at Kent makes too much of a difference because we have seen the Golden Flashes lose time in and time out this year in Kent, Ohio. I'm going to take Akron to go on the road and beat Kent State. Sure, you can take them plus 1.5, but we like the money line, obviously, for the Akron Zips. Let's move on to our next game as we go to one hell of a ball game here in Lawrenceville, New Jersey. It's a New Jersey matchup between the St. Peter's Peacocks and the Rider Broncs. Yes, a matchup in the MAAC. We're taking Rider. Okay, this is probably the lowest level game we're going to talk about today by far. The reason I like Rider here is because of their victory over Marist a couple games ago. Now, we are actually going to talk more about Marist later in the video, so again, we're going to have multiple games here in the MAAC, but Marist is 8-1 this year in the MAAC, right? There are 3 teams in this conference that are 8-1. It is Marist, it's Quinnipiac, and it's Merrimack. And again, Marist's only loss this season is to the Rider Broncs. That is an incredible victory for Rider. They went on the road and upset Marist and beat them by 7 points. So what has Rider done since? They've lost back-to-back games to Iona and Quinnipiac. Again, Iona, good team. Quinnipiac, one of those other elite teams in the conference. No real shame in losing those games. Now, they do have some really troubling games early in their conference play schedule. I mean, a home loss to Manhattan doesn't really stand out all that well. A loss to Canisius on the road isn't really great, but I'm okay with Rider in this spot, and here's why. St. Peter's is extremely underwhelming. Guys, this team can't score. That's the problem with St. Peter's. For as bad as you want to say the Broncs have been playing recently, back-to-back performances against Iona and Quinnipiac where they score 60 points, guys, look at what St. Peter's does on a nightly basis. In MAAC play so far in 2025, as the calendar, of course, is flipped to the new year, they lost to Quinnipiac 59-46, again, 46 points. They go to Niagara, the 2-7 Niagara team in their conference, and lose 70-60 on the road. They beat Canisius 62-49, but don't forget, again, that's the worst team in the conference. They are 2-18 as a whole this season. They lose to Marist, obviously. They do play that game competitively, but still, they only put up 51 points in that basketball game. They go to Sacred Heart and win, which is their most impressive performance this season. The Duquesne win maybe, but still, or UMBC, honestly. Regardless, it's their most impressive conference victory. They go to Sacred Heart and win the game by 5 points. But guys, their last game, and I get it, Merrimack's good, they scored 37 points. They scored 37 points in a 40-minute basketball game. There were more minutes than points scored for the Peacocks in that game. I can't trust St. Peter's to win a basketball game if they're putting up 37, again, at home. That's an embarrassing display of offense in that game. St. Peter's, they are led by Marcus Randolph, who is their best scorer. He averages 14 points a night. Armani Ziegler averages 11, and Bryce Eaton will give you about 10 as well. But Eaton was their leading scorer in their last game against Merrimack with 8 points. That's just not going to cut it. And I get it, Merrimack wasn't shooting the lights out either, but hell, at least they scored 48 compared to St. Peter's' 37, and ultimately that's the reason why we're taking Rider in this game. I don't think St. Peter's is effectively able to score. And sure, the entire MAAC is a little, low scoring, the entire conferences. This is a defensive-minded conference, if I were to say. But I do think the Bronx are better. The Bronx do have 3 scorers who, again, they're not going to blow you away, but they're guys who can score. We're talking about TJ Weeks Jr., Jay Alvarez, and Tariq Ingram. These guys can go out there and score. They all average more than 11 a night. Ingram being the big, and of course Weeks being that guy who's going to lead the offense. But it's been, again, Alvarez in the Iona game. Jay Alvarez scored 28. You're going to get a mixed bag from Rider, but they have guys who are capable of going off in games, and I think they are the all-around better basketball team. And yes, they did go on a huge losing streak. They started the year 4-2, then they fell to 4-11, obviously with that 9-game losing streak, but they responded by winning 3 in a row in conference play, again against Niagara on the road, beating Mount St. Mary's, beating Marist on the road, and again, that Marist victory shows that yes, Rider is very capable of winning big games. So when I saw the line for this game, I was really surprised. Rider's an underdog at home? I mean, what has St. Peter's done to warrant them being favorites to win this basketball game? I really don't know. I mean, sure, their only victories this year in conference play are on the road. You can give them that. I mean, again, Sacred Heart and Canisius, but I do think the Rider Bronx shouldn't be dogs in this game just because St. Peter's has been winning games on the road. I mean, Rider, again, they went on the road and beat Marist a couple games ago. I know they lost to Iona at home, but St. Peter's lost to that team by 10 points. I think we're fine here with the Rider Bronx. I just really, again, the reason why we're completely going with the Bronx in this game is because I don't think St. Peter's is able to score the basketball. Again, 37 points in their last game, and even in some of their wins, 66. I mean, that's probably one of their best offensive productions all year. It is their best scoring game in conference play this year is 66 points. It's not like they play that great a defense where they're able to shut you down and they can afford to only score that many. No. St. Peter's isn't all that good. They're 7-9 this season, and Rider's 7-13, but still, I like the Bronx to win this basketball game. I think they're able to get it done, and I just don't think the Peacocks are able to score. So give me Rider at home as, to me, again, surprising home dogs in this game. Next up, we move on to, again, the biggest matchup of the day, obviously, the Battle of Indiana between the Indiana Hoosiers and the Purdue Boilermakers. Obviously, the big rivalry here in the Big Ten, well, not the big rivalry, but one of the big rivalries, obviously, and obviously a much bigger rivalry in basketball than it is in football because, hey, that's a one-sided rivalry now in football, man. For the next 15 years, Indiana's going to win that thing at least 14 times, regardless, probably all 15 the way Purdue's football program is going, but we've got the number 10 ranked Purdue Boilermakers hosting the Indiana Hoosiers in West Lafayette. This is going to be a blowout. This is going to be a complete blowout. Indiana does not stand a damn chance. They just don't. This Hoosiers team is not built to go on the road and win. Now, we took them in their last game. I think they were, 3.5-point underdogs, 2.5-point underdogs against Maryland in their last game. It was at Assembly Hall. It was in Bloomington. Indiana had that game. They choked it at the end. They only lost by 1, though, so we covered, obviously, winning our bet. Rodney Rice with the go-ahead 3 to win that one, and then the Hoosiers and Mike Woodson drew up the worst inbound play ever to try to go win it. Regardless, we covered. Don't care. Indiana's probably not making the tournament. They can say hi to the NIT, or maybe they'll just decline it again like they did last year. Because Indiana, guys, has lost 4 out of the last 5 games. They won 3 in a row in the Big Ten, 3 in a row. They beat Rutgers. They went to Penn State and won, which is, I think, their best performance of the year. They beat USC, and they go to Iowa. They get smacked. They host Illinois, lose. The student section leaves at halftime, like it was an old Indiana football game. They go to Columbus. They find a way to win. Big victory, but then they just drop back-to-back. They choke one away against Northwestern, and the Maryland game, again, another choke job. So when are the Hoosiers going to learn, and when are we going to get Mike Woodson out of Bloomington, Indiana? That's the real question here. Somehow, someway, Indiana is still in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten this year, at least record-wise. They are 5-5 in the conference. They're going to fall to 5-6 here. This team's not equipped to go to West Lafayette. I mean, if you want to take last year's performances against the Boilermakers to account, I mean, both those games were competitive. Again, I know Purdue was better last season. Is Indiana worse this year than they were last year? I don't know. I think they're about the same, honestly. But, I mean, look at both those games, right? The first game in Bloomington, Indiana loses it by 21. They go to West Lafayette in February. They lose the game by 20 points, right? I want to believe in the Indiana Hoosiers, but simply put, I just can't. I mean, why should I believe in this basketball team? What does Indiana have this year that makes you believe in them? Literally nothing. They're still the same team that they were last year. I mean, I guess it wasn't Khalil Ware's fault because Khalil Ware now is balling and likely going to win the Rookie of the Year this year for the Miami Heat. So I don't know. Again, Mbako hasn't really stepped up to the plate. Renault's been dealing with injuries, obviously. Omar Ballo has been really good for this team. For the rest of the squad, again, you're going to have, again, the guard play hasn't been horrible out of recently Miles Rice and Luke Goody. Like, it's been solid out of those guys, but Trey Galloway has been absolutely horrible recently is another way to put it. Galloway, again, sold a couple games for the Hoosiers in the last like 5. I don't know, man. I can't trust Indiana to win anything. I like Purdue a lot more, obviously, and the Boilermakers are coming off that huge victory over Michigan. Again, we try to talk about as much Big Ten basketball as we can. It's my favorite conference to watch, at least in college basketball, and yes, the SEC is great as well, but I love the Big Ten, and not just because I went to a Big Ten school. But Trey Kaufman, right, and the guys absolutely pitched a shutout against the Michigan Wolverines in their last game at home at West Lafayette, their last game as a whole. And again, this team's just too good for Indiana. We're talking about Trey Kaufman, Ren. We're talking about Braden Smith. We're talking about Fletcher Lawyer. This is too good of a Purdue team. They will outgun Indiana. They will outscore Indiana. And they're the much more physical team, and they are better coached than Indiana as well. The Hoosiers don't stand a damn chance. It is a pretty, large line, 12.5 for the Boilermakers in this game, but I think they win it by 20. I think it's going to be very similar to the results we got last year between the Hoosiers and the Boilermakers. I think Purdue handles Indiana fairly easily. Minus 12.5. I like the Boilermakers a lot in this spot. I like Trey Kaufman, right? Again, I've spoken at lengths about him this season as he has been an elite scorer this year in the Big Ten. Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, again, have done their job as well for the Boilermakers. They have been, again, the 3 best guys for Purdue all year long, and that crowd's going to be rowdy. Again, it just means more when Indiana goes to West Lafayette. No matter how bad the Hoosiers are, that crowd gets up for that basketball game to the same extent how that crowd in Bloomington will get up for when Purdue comes there, but one school's got a really good basketball team this year and the other doesn't. But hey, at least there's a trade-off now because Indiana's actually good in football. Because last year it was hell in Bloomington. It just was. All right. Give me the Purdue Boilermakers to win at home against the Indiana Hoosiers, and they will cover the 12.5 points as well. Let's move on to our final game of the night. It is the nightcap, actually. Yes, in I'm not even gonna Poughkeepsie, New York, I believe. We've got the Marist Red Foxes taking on the Siena Saints. So yeah, the IU Purdue game is at 5 p.m. on Fox. This is a game on ESPNU at 6 p.m. So it's going to be a 9 p.m. local start time in New York for this basketball game. I don't know why it's that late. It's not even like it's a doubleheader on ESPNU. I don't know why the game's so late, but whatever. It gives us something to watch, I guess, later in the night. We got Marist and Siena. I'm taking Marist. Taking the Red Foxes in this spot. Minus 5.5, I don't mind it at all. I actually kind of don't understand the line, if I'm being honest with you here. Siena has just been very mid this season. They have not looked good on the road this year at all. I don't think they've won a road game in the MAAC this year, except for Canisius, who is 2-7 and absolutely horrible. They went to Niagara, lost. Went to Iona, lost. Went to Merrimack, lost. Went to Quinnipiac, lost by 19 points. What do we expect now when they go to Marist? Again, I think the Quinnipiac game is a good example of what happens when Siena plays a good team on the road. They get blown out, right? Hell, Merrimack still beat them by 6, who is another very good team in the conference, but Merrimack will not score at the lengths that obviously Quinnipiac will. But Merrimack beat them by 6, Quinnipiac beat them by 19. If Marist wants to prove that they're a half-decent team in this conference, well, obviously they, record-wise, are the best team in the conference. And again, if they're going to prove how great they are, well, again, the 2 other top teams in this conference, Siena went there and couldn't cover this line against. I'd expect Marist to blow this team out. I get it, the Red Foxes have been playing some competitive basketball recently, right? The Canisius win, obviously, they blew them out on the road, but Canisius is horrible. They go to Niagara, win the game by 2 points. That's surprisingly, for as bad as Niagara's been this season, they have played teams very competitively at home this year, but again, Marist was able to pull out a victory there. They lose to Rider, which was the game we were talking about earlier, obviously, with the Bronx, but we'll just forego that one for now. They go to St. Peter's and win by 5, Fairfield by 10, Quinnipiac win at home by 7, but again, Marist is a much better team at home than they are on the road, and that's the case for a lot of college basketball teams, obviously, but I would expect to get this line for Marist on the road against Siena. That's what I'd expect this line to be, about 5.5, maybe 4.5, 3.5 potentially. But for Marist at home, I really like this line. Marist has been much better at home this year than they've been on the road. And I think, again, as a whole, obviously, they're the better team than the Siena Saints. Marist is an undefeated team in the conference. They are, an 8-1 team in the conference, obviously, with the loss to Rider. And Siena's a 4-5 team who has gone on the road and lost on multiple occasions so far this year. For the Red Foxes, they're led by Josh Palascari. Probably butchered the hell out of that, but he's averaging 16.5. Elijah Lewis averaging 12. Jackson Price averaging 10. But again, nothing about this line makes sense to me. I would expect a Marist blowout in this game. They play much better at home, and Siena has not been that good on the road this season. They do have a couple guys who can score. You get Justice Schultz, who averages 15. Major Freeman averages 14. And Brennan Coyles averaging 13 a night for the Saints. But I just don't think they match up all that well against Marist. When we have seen Siena against the best teams in this conference, they have lost and they have not covered the 5.5 points. Right? And, one of those games is a Merrimack team that struggles to get away from teams at times. Again, they play low-scoring competitive games. Obviously, Merrimack was still able to cover. I think this game is more comparable to the Quinnipiac win over Siena. And that was, 11-point victory for Quinnipiac, we said earlier? I believe. Yeah, it was a double-digit win, though, for Quinnipiac in that one. They won it by 19, So I think Marist is completely fine in this one. They have bounced back since the Rider loss. I think, again, if we got this game right after their home loss to Rider, I'd be a little bit concerned. But since then, they've won back-to-back games on the road at Niagara and at Canisius. I think they're going to be more than fine in this spot here against Siena. Again, the game's at home for Marist. If this was a road spot, I'd be a little bit concerned. I'd still take Marist, but now they're at home, minus 5.5. I am more than okay taking the Red Foxes to improve to 9-1 in MAAC play with a victory and a 5.5-point win or a 6-point win or more against the Siena Saints. So folks, thank y'all for watching our 5 best bets for college basketball here on the final day of January 31st. If you have not yet though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video, and make sure to comment if you do disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back tomorrow for more college basketball best bets here on the channel. If you want 10 best bets, make sure to leave a like, because again, if we get 100 likes in this video, we'll do 10 of these best bets tomorrow here on the channel. And make sure to join us again in a couple hours for our NBA predictions as well. So folks, thank y'all for watching, and Mamba forever.